there, it's Amanda here from Lolli Lulu Crafts, and today we are going to be doing a Cricut project using the original Cricut expression, which means that we will be using a cartridge rather than design space on the computer. So if you guys have the original expression and don't have an Explorer or a Maker or whatever, and just don't want to use the design space on the computer, then this will be great for you. If you do have either of those machines and have the use of design space, then you can still make this project perfectly fine. All you need to do is put the dimensions on design space rather than using the dial on the machine. Okay, so let's get crafting. So as I said, I'm using my regular Cricut expression and I'm going to be using the Forever Young cartridge. So what you want to do is open your machine, do not switch it on, put your cartridge in, put your overlay on, and then we're going to be using the image from page 27 in the book. You obviously want to put your cartridge and overlay on before you switch the machine on, because it can apparently damage the cartridge. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've always been told. So always put it on after you've done your cartridge. So the first thing we can do is cut out that first layer. That's in black because we're going to follow that sort of silhouette image look. So now I could, because I forgot that I could do this, I could have put several bits of different colours on the one mat and cut this out in one go, pretty much probably without having to keep taking the mats in and out. So I could have done a section of black, a section of the next colour, and the other two colours that I was going to be using, and that almost certainly would have fit on all of it on one mat. But I just didn't remember I could do that. I've been so used to using the Explore now and then now the Maker that I forgot that you could do it like that. So if you're doing this at home, I would suggest that you cut a piece to size. This has been cut at 6 inches, so that's 6 inches across the mat, and it's probably only a couple of inches wide, so you don't need very much up the mat. And then the next layer you could just put sort of at the top corner, and you would definitely fit it all in. But anyway, my next layer is the shift layer. So it was the 4th button across on the top row, so you're going to click this time shift and then that 4th button, so that will bring up that second image. You always want to wait for the image to show up in your little panel there. Now on the cameras the panel does look like it's flicking. In real life that's not happening, it's just the way the camera picks it up. So again, you want to keep it at 6 inches. I've got everything set at max, otherwise the speed, the depth, the pressure, everything at max. And this is American Crafts cardstock. I always find it cuts so lovely for the Cricut. And then we're doing the little flowers and the belt that's on there. Now there's like a little base flower that's got the leaves, and it's only the leaves that are going to show, but I didn't want to do green or anything, so I decided to go with white for the base, and then the center of the flower is going to be white as well, and the belt's going to be white. So we're going to do the shift of that element. So that's going to be layer. You need to press layer, then for the first one it's just the button, and then for the second bit it's layer, shift, and then the button. So now we're doing that one, and so that second one, the shift button where we've got the belt, etc., I need to cut that twice because there are elements there that it needs to be in a different color. So the flower itself I want to be in the pink, so I just have to cut that again. So for that I'm just hitting repeat last, and that saves me pressing all those buttons all over again. I mean, I actually really love my expression. I think it's a really great machine to use actually, and I sort of thought, oh, I must use it again. I just really enjoy it, but sometimes you get out of a little bit of the habit, such as you can see here I've put 2 pieces of card on. Well, I could have cut those much smaller, they could have gone over the other side, and so you could have definitely fit all 4 on each one. So here you can see I'm just showing you what I'm keeping and what I'm not keeping in each section, but I'll show you the complete amount in a minute. I'll have it all laid out, but basically I'm keeping everything but I'm keeping nothing but the large flower in pink, and basically throwing away only the large flower in the white. So you can see it all laid out there, but you can do that in any way you want. that suits you, but I just wanted that combination to keep it quite simple. I didn't particularly need it to look like a flower, it just needed to look like a decoration. So that's all our elements cut out. So now let's get on to putting everything together. So first of all, we're going to take the largest layer, which is obviously the jumpsuit, and for that I'm just going to use some regular white wet glue. I just find this easier when you're putting bits together. You can sort of smudge it across with your fingers so that you cover all of the actual element itself, so you get a good coverage of the glue so it all sticks down solidly. But also, for me, more importantly, with things like this, you want a little bit of wriggle room because it doesn't always go immediately into position. For this one, I would recommend that you start at the shoulders because that's a definite start point. You know exactly where the shoulders element has to be, whereas the legs, you're not quite sure necessarily how high up them trousers start, etc. So I always think that's quite a good starting point for it. So then for the next bit, it's still a wet glue, but it's just the same sort of glue, I think, but in a pen, and it just makes it easier for these smaller elements. So I just put a tiny dot in the middle of the pink flower, which is meant to be like the petals, I guess, and then put the center of the flower in position. I just used my tweezers to knock it to exactly where I wanted it to be and give it a little press. That also has the advantage of any excess glue that does leak out, it will just get rid of that. Then I just put some of the same glue on the back and I added it to that element that I said to you is basically just the leaves that are poking out for that. Sometimes on these elements, what you'll find is Cricut has put like that little tiny dash lines, cut lines on the element underneath to show you where to stick these other elements down. This doesn't appear to have happened on this one, so if you wanted to miss out the flower completely, you could do so, no problem at all. So next I add the belt, just using the same wet glue pen as before, and then I'm going to add the flower. However, for the flower I'm going to be using the construction glue, which is like a gel glue, and this just allows for the difference in height between the belt and the jumpsuit below, so it makes sure that the flower sticks down properly, whereas perhaps a wet glue which is thinner might not stick down as well. So there is our girl all complete. So I think she looks really good. I'm really pleased with how she's turned out. So I'm going to pop her to one side and we're going to move on to putting the card together. Okay, so what we're doing first of all is taking a white piece of cardstock. This is 350 GSM and I'm cutting it to 8 inches by 7 inches, and then I'm scoring it at 3.5 inches, which will then give me a finished card that's lovely and tall and narrow at 3.5 inches by 8 inches. I did check with my envelope maker just to confirm that there was an envelope that I could make that would fit that card, because I thought it would be obviously easier to have one that was fitting the sizes of the envelopes. So that's why I ended up with that exact size. I knew I wanted it tall. Next I'm taking my pattern paper. I'm just taking a snip off the edge there because I didn't like the pattern on the edge there, just the way it finished. And then I'm cutting that to 3 inches to 6.5 inches. So I'm cutting it only 1/4 inch each side, and it will be the same at the top, but the bottom will have a bigger gap, and that's so that I can put my sentiment. I'm then taking a second piece of the pattern paper and I'm cutting this to size for my envelope. Next I am going to stamp my sentiment. I'm using this gorgeous stamp from Pink by Design. It's from the set called Soul Sister. Now I believe they don't make these stamps anymore, but you of course may have them in your stash, but I'm sure you could find something that would be equally cute for this. It doesn't have to be any particular sentiment. You could even just say happy birthday, but I thought this particular one just worked nicely. But there's lots of these kind of fun stamp sentiments out there, so that would be cool. And we're using the Alter News ink here, and I stamped it a couple of times just to get that depth of colour. Now I will, as always, list all the products used on my blog post as best as I'm able to. Obviously some of the things like the paper here, it was just in my stash. I'm not even sure what brand it is, but as much as I can I will put down lists and links of products for you. So all I'm doing here is attaching my pattern paper to the front of the card. That's obviously above where my sentiment is. I knew roughly how much space I needed for the sentiment and where it was, and the paper was cut to size, and I think that turned out really, really nicely. Originally I was going to put a bit of ribbon at the bottom across the paper, but when I sort of placed it, I just didn't like the look of it. And then, as always, I want to put just something on the inside just to make it not be dull. You know, I just always think when you've got such a fun card on the front in particular and you open it up and it's just blank, it's just a bit of a disappointment. So just adding a little bit of the paper that was from the scraps to the bottom there, and then a bit later you'll see I also added a little bit more of a stamped sentiment on the inside because I just felt it still needed something more. And you can see there, that was from the other set, also from my Pink Stamper or Pink by Design. There was 2 sets there, so I'm not sure which one it was, but again, with both of those they are discontinued anyway, so I'm sorry about that. But again, I'm sure you can find a sentiment that will work equally well. Now these are Paper Mania crystals, but again, any crystals will do. These are pink. It's not quite so easy to see, I think, on the camera, but they are actually pink. I put 4 down the bottom just around that sentiment area, and then 2 up the top. Again, just to add a little bit of bling to it, but not too much. I just felt, you know, the little girl on her own, well, she's not a little girl, the lady on her own was adequate. And then I added some of my hunky dory foam strips just down the middle, as you can see, and down the legs of my lady. Now what I ended up doing was actually sticking her shoes down flat, so if I'd have realized I was going to do that, this would have been the point to add the adhesive rather than when I did do it, which was after she was stuck down, so I kind of had to pull the feet up. So if you're going to copy what I've done, now you want to put some of that wet adhesive on her shoes now, not later like I did, because it definitely will be a lot easier if you do it at this point. So I'm just popping her down. Now that, again, the 2 reasons I add the wet adhesive: 1, you can see it just gives me that wriggle room, but 2, I always feel central heating, foam tape just does not go together very well, and I find that it tends to lift away from the card quite quickly. So by adding this wet adhesive, it just adds that bit of extra strength to keep your element on the front of the card. And here's the bit I was telling you about where I'm actually putting the shoes down flat. I just thought it added a bit of extra dimension really to the look of it. It's very subtle, but it just, I think, was just a little bit of a fun touch that worked well. You could, if you prefer, just put a tiny bit of foam on the back, or maybe some gel glue or something like that, but I quite liked, you can just see how it just pulls them down. I just thought it looked quite fun. Then as a final touch, I added a clear crystal. Well, I say clear, it was like an Aurora Borealis style crystal, so it had a little bit of pinks and greens and sort of those sort of hues to it, and obviously next to the pink it picked up the pink mostly, and I just felt that added a finishing touch to the whole thing, brought it all together really nicely. And that is our card done. Then I made my envelope. Now when I made this tall envelope, the flaps on either side were actually far too long and I had to cut them. You can see how they're straight, so that's why they look like that, but I don't think it looks wrong. If you want to see how the envelope maker actually works, then I will link the video where I show you all about that in the blog post for you, so you can see exactly how the envelope maker's used. It won't obviously be this specific envelope, but it will at least give you an idea on how this particular one works. This is the We Are Memory Keepers envelope maker, and as I say, I'll put that in the blog post for you. If you want to find the blog post, all you need to do is go to the paragraph below this video. It says show more, click on that and you will see the link to the blog post. That will also have tons of photos of the finished card for you, plus links to the products and, as I say, the video link as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this card. I think it's quite fun going sort of back to old school with our Cricut expression. I really enjoyed using that, and I really enjoyed making this card. This sort of reminded me of the style of cards that I used to do back when I was right at the beginning of my channel. It's just funny how you sort of change style, and I just sort of did this card and it kind of ended up, and it was kind of reminiscent. Maybe it was because I was using the expression, it kind of automatically developed that way. But I do like that tall thin card. I thought that was nice for a change, and I thought it worked really well with that figure. I understand that at the moment these tall cards are sort of a little bit vogue, so accidentally I sort of think I'm on trend. But again, with this, you could do this sort of card for all different images on the front and different cuts. You could even make it Christmassy by putting a different thing on the front and a different sentiment, so the style of it can be reused for all different things. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed. I'd love to hear what you think. Leave a comment, put a thumbs up if you enjoyed, all those things that you're supposed to do, and definitely go on over to the blog post and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now. Bye.